And so I look up and I see something black in front of me, and I'm thinking, it's a pig. I've got a lot of wild hogs in that bottom. First thing that goes through my mind is it's a hog because it's black and it's low to the ground. I take a few more steps, and this thing went from ground level to a linebacker position. And I was just like, what the heck? Because hogs don't stand on their hind legs, or hogs don't grow like that. They usually skittish and run off. And then I looked at it again, and it stood up, and it turned around so smoothly from facing me to putting its back toward me, just like it was so fluid. And at that point, I don't know, I was going to John Wayne, because I just threw the camera down, pulled my pocket knife, and went running after it.
Hi there, you're listening to the Bigfoot Society podcast, and I'm Jeremiah Byron. Every week I talk to individuals who have experienced Sasquatch in some way or another, so you won't want to miss an episode. Make sure you're subscribed on the platform that you're listening to, and share this episode with a friend. It does not cost a thing, and it helps the show continue to grow. If you'd like to hear Bigfoot Society episodes early and ad-free, you can do so by becoming a Patreon supporter or a YouTube channel member. Links to those are in the show notes. In Bigfoot Society, I've taken far too much of your time so far, so let's get on with the show. All right, Bigfoot Society, we've got the privilege of talking to Mark tonight. He's a hunter and fisherman from Eastern Texas. How's it going tonight, Mark?
It's going good. How about you?
It's going great. We were already talking a little bit before this, and I'm excited to talk to you about what you've been experiencing down in Eastern Texas.
All I've ever done for a living is hunt and fish, and I've spent lots of times on the water and lots of times in the woods, and never thought my life would encounter anything where it's been.
Are you able to share the area of Eastern Texas that these encounters take place in?
We have the most famous lake in the world, which is Lake Fork. There's a big bottom that goes from Lake Fork to Tawakoni. There's just a big bottom there that's uninhabited and everything else, and that's where my recent encounters have happened.
Gotcha. And if you were looking at this on a map, Lake Fork would be east of Dallas, it looks like. But how far back does this happen?
This last encounter was probably, we're in November, so I'd say probably June, because I was just putting out cameras for my deer to see them eating on the protein, and I give them names and stuff like that as they're growing up.
Gotcha. Mark, what I'm going to do is I'm going to just let you do what you do best, and just, do you mind sharing your story of what happened?
I'd love for people to know more about it, because I'm always optimistic, and this world has so many questions that are unanswered, and I don't want to ever feel like I'm making anything up or anything like that, because this happened out of occurrence, and it was strange. And just to back up just a little bit, I carried a marine biologist one time, and I was telling him my story, and he said, Mark, he said, you'd be shocked at what we pull out of the ocean sometimes. And I said, well, I can't imagine what's in those woods. Backing up to my encounter, I'm putting out my game cams in the summer, because I know these deer are in velvet, and I want to watch and see how many bucks I've got coming through my property. And so I'm just lollygagging around through the woods, middle of the day, about 11 o'clock, because my goal was to put my camera out and go eat lunch, and because I normally start my mornings about 5 o'clock, whether I'm working or not. And I'm walking across the pond dam, and look up, and I see a deer coming at me, and I'm thinking, that's weird. And it went to my right about 60 yards. I walked a few more steps, and then here come another one. And I thought, man, it's 40 yards. I thought, that's pretty weird. Y'all should be going the other direction. My deer are semi-tame, I say that. They see me a lot, so they're not just terrified of me, but to run at me, that's a little bit interesting. As I'm walking across my pond dam, and I've got my cellular camera in my hand. Now, I don't like carrying my phone in the woods, because if you're out there putting up tree ladders or deer stands and ladder stands, I don't want to lose my phone in the woods because I'd never find it. So I just don't even care it unless I'm in my side-by-side. But I do have my cellular camera that sends pictures back to my cell phone in my hand. I'm going across to put it up across the pond. I look up after these deer come at me, and I had cut a limb off of a cedar tree that was about face high when you're in a side-by-side, and I turned this corner on my trail, and it slapped me in the face, so I cut it off, and I just threw it down on the ground right there in this little opening. This little opening is about the size of 2 pickup trucks. And as I walked across the pond dam, I looked up. In the woods, you're going to be looking for movement at any time. And so I look up, and I see something black in front of me, and I'm thinking, it's a pig. I've got a lot of wild hogs in that bottom. First thing that goes through my mind is it's a hog because it's black and it's low to the ground. I take a few more steps, and this thing went from ground level to a linebacker position. And I was just like, what the heck? Because hogs don't stand on their hind legs, or hogs don't grow like that. They usually skimmish and run off. And then I looked at it again, and it stood on up, and it turned around so smoothly from facing me to putting its back toward me, just like it was so fluid. And at that point, I don't know, I was going to John Wayne it because I just threw the camera down, pulled my pocket knife, and went running after it. And at this time, I'm 30 yards when I take off running. It's 30 yards from me. It steps in those woods, and it disappeared. I couldn't believe how fast it got away from my vision. Now, my woods ain't completely thick, but I should have been able to see this thing for at least 100 yards before it crossed my fence row, and I never seen it again at that point. I went back to my cabin, pulled out a pen and some paper, and I drew a sketch of what I had just seen because it was fresh on my mind. And I was flustered. I was flustered pretty good because I was just like, man, I'm not supposed to be seeing this here. I went back and got a tape measure after I drew the picture up on a piece of paper, and I knew where it walked beside this tree. I went over to that tree, and I measured to where I seen a knot. The last visual I seen as it walked by this tree was the knot that I cut a limb off was even with its right ear. Now, I didn't see no ears. It was too hairy to see any ears, but about where I would assume the ear would have been on its right side. And I thought when I first seen it get up, to be honest with you, I thought it was 5, maybe 6 feet tall. And I'm about 5'10", 5'11". When I got to the tree and measured it, I was a little shocked that it measured at 6'6" at the right ear hole. So that would have put the top of the head about, I'd say, close to 7, somewhere in that range. And I started looking around, and I found 3 sets of tracks where it went in, and you can see the depression in the ground, and you can see where it smashed the pine needles down. Can't see no toes, but you can see the outline of the foot, but no toes because it's good hard ground. What's funny is one of the tracks sunk in, and I stood right beside that track, and I couldn't sink the dirt in. Evidently, I'm 250. Evidently, it's heavier than me. It didn't look heavier than me, but it was because of that one step, because I couldn't make it go down. A few days goes by, and I'm out again, and I'm going up that little trail on the side-by-side, and I just see a black flash. This is yards from where I seen it go into that tree. And it goes across the trail. It was so fast, it was like if you blinked your eyes, somebody just threw a football across the deal. It's just that's how fast it went across the trail. And I never seen it go through the woods or nothing again. And I was just, at that point, I was just like, golly, now I've seen it twice. I said, I'm going to get it. I'm going to get a picture of it somehow. So I have 10 game cams out. I'm thinking, if you walk through my property, I'm going to catch you on one of them, somewhere, somehow. And I kept waiting to get a picture. About 4 days later, I'm going through there to check my cameras, and I see it on my neighbor's property, just on my back fence. And I was able to pull my phone up and snap a picture And it's a pretty interesting picture, and it looks just like what I seen walk away from me 4 days prior, or 3 or 4 days prior. And that's the last that I've seen it. Now, what's interesting is opening morning of deer season, on rifle season, I was listening, and I've heard these things supposedly whistle. Not sure if that's any truth to that or not, but I heard 3 whistles that morning in the woods, and they were several hundred yards apart, and it's just a one. That's all. Kind of if you had a buddy deer hunting, you go, I'm over here, and it's just a simple whistle. I heard those 3 whistles in a triangle area, and they come together. And you could tell when they got closer, they whistled till they got closer, and it could have been people for that matter. I don't know. But then I heard the doggone. You remember the old Budweiser commercial? They used to go ah, or something like that.
Yeah.
It was kind of ah.
No way.
It's what it sounded like. It's like ah. And I was like, what? And then the next thing I know, I heard it make 2 more noises, weird sound. I can't even try to duplicate. I couldn't even tell you what it sounded like. It wasn't a whoop or whatever, but it went back down in this bottom toward the lake. All this is happening pretty much in that one little corner of my property. I've got pretty heavy cameras in there, but I'm still waiting on the next encounter. But I want to back up one thing. In 2020, where I had my game cameras out, I was checking cameras one day, and I went through the pictures, and I seen 2 pigs in the middle of the day, and they're running. And I'm thinking, I'm always looking to see what my deer are running from, or my hogs are running from, whether it's a coyote or hog dogs or whatever. And I go to the next frame, the next picture, and I see this thing coming up out of, I got a little creek that runs through my place, and I see this thing coming up out of the creek. It's 60 feet in front of my camera, might even be a little further, but it was pretty good ways. And I showed it to Jeff Meldrum. Most people in the Bigfoot world know Jeff Meldrum. He thought it was pretty interesting, and I showed him some of the tracks that I found. He thought it was pretty interesting. But it looks like a gorilla. That's all I can tell you. It looks just like a gorilla. And it's on its knees, and it's coming up out of that creek, and it's got a big old gray nose, and it's got nostrils you can put your thumb in. It's crazy. I'll shoot you all the pictures I got, because that right there, some people go, that's a bird. I ain't never seen pigs run from a bird, and I can't make out a bird of it. I looked at a gorilla more than anything. Everybody had zoomed it in and said it's a gorilla. And there's at one point in the picture, let's just say you put your thumb or your fingers in your pocket, like your right pocket, and or if you just put your hand on your waist, how your little pinky kind of pops out. I'm doing it right now. I'm just putting my pressure on my right pocket of my leg, and my pinky just sticks straight out. I'm not even trying to. It just sticks out. In this picture of what looks to be a gorilla, you can see a finger. You can see a gray finger. It's the only thing it can be. You can follow the arm all the way down, and there's the pinky. There's the finger sticking out there. I don't know if it's the pinky, but you can see the finger. To say I have something, I've got a neighbor across the street. I showed him the pictures. He's got a little bit more acreage than I do. He was intrigued by them, and we're going to keep our eyes out and see what happens next.
Dr. Meldrum has seen the photo. Your neighbor has. It doesn't sound like this has been on the internet at all.
No.
Yeah, that'd be very interesting to see that. So going back to when you had seen the creature, would you be able to talk through what you drew of the creature, what details you might remember?
Yeah, I can send you I took a picture of my little drawing, which if any of the listeners right now have ever watched the Addams Family, it looked like Cousin It. You remember Cousin It? It was just a little fur ball.
Yep.
That's what it was, but it was black. So basically, when I drew it on the paper, I drew it about the size of my thumb, and then just made the hair outlines. But you could definitely see, and I still remember this right now in my mind, just like I'm looking at it. I remember the back of the head being a little bit taller than the front. Not like a slide slope, but definitely bigger in the back than it was in the front, if that makes any sense. It's not like it's got a chronicle head or whatever they people say or whatever. It didn't look like that. It just looked like it definitely was taller at the back and a little shorter above the forehead.
I do know what you mean, yeah. So it's interesting. I've never heard anyone else use the analogy of Cousin It, which I totally know what you're talking about. Is there a certain reason?
Some of your listeners may be too young.
Oh, they definitely would be. I just know because I used to watch Nick at Night as being a lot younger back in the day. But anyways, what were the specific things you noticed about it that made you call it Cousin It, that made you jump right to that analogy?
It's pretty hairy. It's pretty hairy. I hear a lot of people say we've seen one and it was like it had the mange or hair was missing, and I can see that because the picture of what I call the gorilla, there's a spot right between its eyes on the top of its head that a big chunk of hair is missing. How many times do you walk through the woods with a ball cap on and a limb knocked your head off or hat off? This gorilla picture has a spot right there on top of its head that you would think was catching limbs and jerking all the hair out. It's a big old bald spot, pretty obviously. But the shine, now here's something that I've seen 2 different times on it. One time I seen it across the fence after it was chasing the pigs. My girlfriend and I were traveling around the back, and I seen something on the other side of the fence low to the ground. And I just said, I don't remember that stump being there. And next thing I know, it took off and it was low to the ground. I assumed that was a pig. But I remember seeing what looked to be like a silver streak down its back when it was that day across. When I seen it turn and walk away from me 2 months ago, 3 months ago, in June, it looked like right between the shoulder blades, it had about 16 or 18 inches of either white hair or silver hair between the shoulder blades. I'll never forget it because it stuck out big time. But now I also thought, could that be a glimmer? And then I thought, no, because what I seen across that fence a year or so ago, it had the same thing. So I think I'm dealing with the same whatever. Not a unicorn, I can tell you that.
You said it's not a glimmer. Can you define what you mean by that?
It's like if sunlight hits a horse's hair, it'll just give that glare.
Okay.
The shiny side, shiny like it's using or whatever, make it shine.
Totally got it.
And one of the pictures I took where it's going the other side before it took off running, you can see that same shimmer. You can see it, and it's 100 yards away from me. I say it's 100 yards away. Maybe it's 70 yards away from me, but I got a pretty good picture of it. You can zoom it in and see that shine off the hair. So the hair seems to be long and black. I don't see any color difference. It looks like black as the ace of spades. It's black. We don't have bears in East Texas. You can go north of here toward Oklahoma and maybe see a few stragglers coming down. Mm-hmm. Where I'm at, I don't know if a bear's ever been seen in our county, ever. It's a bear. Look, this thing was so fast, a bear couldn't go that fast if it had been drugged behind a truck. It's not possible. It's not possible. The steps weren't very far apart going into that tree line because it had just turned around and it didn't have to take but 3 steps and it was in the woods. You see what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. So those steps were not like it was trying to get away at that point. And I never could find any in the woods because of the undergrowth and forage and stuff like that in there. But the ones going in were, you can see the depression of them and the outline of them and stuff like that.
How long would you say the tracks were?
10 to 12 maybe.
Okay.
And I'd probably lean more to the 12s.
Sure.
It's just hard to guesstimate when you're looking at it on the ground, but I wear a 10 and a half, and it was every bit as long as my foot, but that's in a boot, so if you measure, the boot was probably 12 inches.
So Cousin It, yeah, we're just going to refer
I'm sorry, that's the only thing I can describe.
I say go for it. Go for it. It sounds like you got a look at the face of the creature. Was the whole face covered with hair then, or?
I never got, all I got to see is the back of the head.
Okay. Gotcha.
Never did get to see the deal, but you could tell when it went, as it turned around, you could tell that it was big at the back, and it was just, I don't know, my head may slope like that, I don't know. It was just a gradual decline, and I mean, that's all. I never got to see the face. I want to see the face, but never got to see the face. I just got to see the side and the head, and I couldn't even see an ear because if it had an ear, it was either really small or it's covered completely by hair. But when you see the pictures I sent you, it's pretty woolly. I can't imagine how hot it is in this Texas heat.
Exactly. When it's moving away from you, did you notice anything about the arms or the legs at all?
No, because see, the bush was in the tree limb that I had cut.
Yep.
It stands about 4 feet tall.
Okay.
It was, most of that was behind it. So when it turned and went away, I'm looking from its torso up. And it's like its arms were right up against its side. So when it went in, it was almost one uniform shape, so to speak. It's not like it was slinging its arms left and right. Mm-hmm. It was just like you just turned around real slow and just walked. It didn't act like it was scared. When it was walking, before I took off running, it was walking. But when I ran, that's when either it decided, hey, I better get or whatever. I can't believe it'd be scared of me. But when I started running, it was gone. It was so fast. I'm still blown away by how fast it actually got into those woods, and I never seen it again. That's impossible.
Because you said that you were chasing after it with, you said a pocket knife, or what type of knife again?
Yeah, no, so when I fish, I carry a small pocket knife. Uh-huh. But when I'm in the woods, I carry a big pocket knife. I say a big pocket knife. It's a 5-incher, and it's razor sharp. I keep it sharp at all times. But it's the only thing I had. I just didn't know what else to do. If I would have had, I carry my 9 with me now all the time. I don't go in those woods without 9. Even if I'm bow hunting, I got it with me. Especially because after what I've seen, I'm just like, man, I'm back there bow hunting. What am I going to do? Poke him with an arrow? So I want to have protection, and I don't know that I would shoot one. This depends. I don't know that I would shoot. I'm not going to shoot anything. I don't know what it is, period. But if it turns and counters me, then I have to make a decision, either me or him, and that might bring a decision on the plate. But I don't want to shoot one. I just want to get a good visual one with the things that's happened to me in my life in the last 10 years from hunting experience and stuff. Now I'm really about more than anything. Now, my family has Indian heritage, so if you don't know this, every Indian tribe actually has a name for it. Every Indian tribe has a name for it. Even Eskimos have a name for it. So I wasn't too much into it. Didn't care whether they existed or not. I've been in the woods all my life. Didn't care. But now that the things have happened to me, I started looking into it more, and I'm starting to put pieces together that's happened to me through the years, thinking I've been around these things a lot more than I thought I had been. Some of the things that have happened, the tracks and stuff like that, oh, man, it's pretty interesting. Never thought it'd be right here in my backyard.
Exactly, right. No one ever thinks that. And you've talked to your neighbors as well about them seeing creatures on their land as well, it sounds like?
No, I have one neighbor that we communicate on deer, which I'm seeing this deer, are you seeing it on your property, blah, blah, blah. And I asked him, I said, you're further down in that bottom than I am. You ever have anything weird down there or anything? He goes, what are you talking about? And I showed him the picture of that, and he goes, no. He said, but send me that picture. And so I sent him the picture. And he says, I hear some things down there, but I ain't never seen nothing.
Oh, okay.
And I was like, I'm only like 500 yards from you.
Yeah.
I'm candy corner of your fence. You're down in the bottom. Might keep an eye out, see if there's anything happening down there. He ain't never text back that he's seen anything, but he was like, I need to see that picture. And I showed him that picture. You send that to me.
Have you heard any screams or whoops or anything?
Yes.
Okay.
Never paid no mind. I never did. I'd be down there hunting pigs with a thermal at night and hear stuff. They're like, what? What is that? I've heard mountain lions. I heard bobcats, foxes. They all make interesting noises, but you can tell some of these things, you can't put an animal to the sound, so to speak. And I heard some pigs scream for bloody murder back there. And we've had some pigs show up with ears missing. I assume that was hog hunters. But we've had some pigs that were dead, found dead on my property, and they had an ear missing. And I thought that was pretty strange. But I don't know, it could be hog hunters taking the ear as a trophy or whatever.
It sounds like you've got an eye out on your property now. You're always looking for something to show up, which is cool.
10 cameras.
Yeah. Something I also wanted to talk to you about, and this is getting off subject for a little bit, but just because that area of Texas is also known for some other things as well. And so I'm just throw it out there. If you've ever seen or heard anyone that's had an encounter with like an upright canine ever, or something called a dog man? No?
Now, I heard this dogman theory, and I'm not going to say it don't exist. Again, I'm going to be optimistic. I'm even optimistic that most likely a unicorn don't exist, but as sure as I say he don't, somebody will find one. So I'm always going to be optimistic because of that, but I never heard anything like that. What's pretty interesting, Jeremiah, because now that I've had this and started looking into it, I hear these so-called experts say they follow waterways. But you got to think about where I'm at.
Mm-hmm.
We have the Sabine to the south.
Mm-hmm.
We have the Sulphur to the north. And then the Trinity too far back that way to the west. We're kind of in the middle of a lot. And then, of course, you got Caddo Lake, the Falk Nest Monster out of Arkansas, the Falk Monster or the Legend of Boggy Creek. That's less than 70 miles from me, or where Boggy Creek runs into Caddo Lake.
Oh, there's no doubt about it that you are in the right area where a lot of stuff happens. So it's not out of the question that it doesn't sound like you have a zoo right next door where like a gorilla could get loose from, right?
That's what when people said that gorilla, when I showed people that picture of that one, they said that somebody must have got one. Look, it got loose at the zoo. I said, dang, the zoo had whatever. There's been no gorilla in a zoo lost around here ever, so don't make up stories.
Gotcha. The other question I've been throwing out just for fun is any stories you've ever heard of people seeing something that resembles like a hyena?
You talking about like a chupacabra?
Not chupacabras are awesome, but this would be that's a good question.
I've never heard anything like that around here.
Okay, yeah. Usually a hyena sighting would be totally different than a chupacabra, but yeah, I guess down there you're going to have
there's people that actually breed hyenas, and I wouldn't be shocked if there's some in Texas.
Oh yeah, well, that's a good point. Yeah.
Yeah, I've seen a video of people that bred them and they got them as pets.
We were talking earlier about you've had some interesting things you've seen up in Oklahoma as well. Do you mind sharing about that for a bit?
No, that's really where all this starts. That's where it got interesting through the years, and like I said, who would have ever thought I could have had this happen in my backyard? And I tell people, you can't unsee what you've seen. You can't do it. And you might make up stories, but you're making up a story on something you've never seen. But when you've seen it, and if you people that know me, and if you ask them about me, they're going to tell you, hey, that's the most honest guy you're ever going to meet. A lot of people tell me I'm too honest. My daddy told me not to ever tell a lie. You tell a lie, you got to cover it up with another one. So I just tell it like it is, and you can take it for what it is, and that's just the way it is. So getting to my Oklahoma story, and I want to start from not the exact beginning, but it's part of the beginning. So I'm going to. This old man was a friend of my best friend, and he told us to come up and deer hunt with him. He said, y'all come up here. He goes, I stay up here by myself. He bought this acreage. Can't remember how many acreages it is total, but it's kind of bottleneck south of Tulsa. And he had told us when he bought it, he keeps all the cows on this side because on the other side of the creek, he'd lose a cow if it got over there, so he would never go over there. And a lazy old man, so if he's going to hunt, he sure ain't going back there to put no effort in it. He can hunt the meadow. But he told us when he bought that place that he had found a human skeleton up in these rock formations and had a spine on it. And I thought, well, that's pretty cool. I was like, where's that at? And I went and looked for it. He told me I never did find it and everything else. So that kind of comes into play with what may have happened to me or what has happened to me. It may have some instances with that for that matter. It might have been a juvenile one for that what matter. Here's how the story goes. We're hunting, been there hunting. We probably hunted there 5, 6 years. Never nothing weird. Just typical deer hunting. Oklahoma is a 2-week season, so we're there during the week of Thanksgiving, and it's over. It's a week after, the week of, and a week after. So we go up there. We hunt for 3 or 4 or 5 days, and then go up to another place in Oklahoma and hunt again. We're walking down the fence row before daylight, or right at daylight. I'm going to cross this big creek, which is about a 20-foot in up on the other side. It turns into an old logging road. So there used to be an old bridge at one time there, and it's blowed out. But this logging road's on the other side, and I had a deer feeder sitting way back in there. And it took me a pretty good little jog to get back there in the dark. And it was, I'm not scared of anything that I know of, but it was pretty scary walking in there in the dark because you can't see your hand in front of your face. We're walking down the fence row, and all of a sudden his cows come running over at us, like, not like we were going to feed them, but like a stampede. And they're just moving, and we're like, my best friend, he's a city boy, so he has no idea about cows, nothing whatsoever. He looks at me and says, what's wrong with them cows? I was like, dude, I don't know. I've hunted all over America. I've been running deer hunts for years, and I've seen them around mountain lions, bears, wolves, coyotes. I ain't never seen no cows act like these. I guess they got the mad cow disease, making a humorous part of it. They ran back out, and you can silhouette them in the pasture a little bit because it's starting to get, it's not daylight. The sun is coming up, so the skyline's bright, but the lower base is dark still. They make about a 50 to 75 yard circle, and they came back and they ran into that barbed wire fence at full speed, just like you were herding buffalo off a cliff or whatever. And they cut themselves. They bit 3 of the T-posts over with the weight of them hitting it at a pretty good speed. We jumped back. What the heck? And my buddy says, man, something's wrong with them cows. And he said, what do you think? And I said, dude, I done told you, I don't know. But I can tell you this, whatever's scaring them might scare me. I ain't going in them woods till I can see, because I just got a bow and arrow. You got a gun. I got a bow and arrow. I ain't going in there. I didn't even have my pistol on me. He said, I'm going to go get in the blind. He rode out and get in the blind. I wait there for a little bit. I decided I better get going because it's a long ways back there to my feeder, and it's probably already gone off, and I'm going to walk up and scare the deer I'm trying to kill. I started up this logging road. It's one of them cool mornings, not a hot morning and not a cold morning, but a little hard for a jacket if you're going to be hiking like I was 3/4 of a mile to get to that stand back there. So I'm going up this logging road, and I'm walking up the logging road, and I stop to take my jacket off to stick it in my backpack. And I understand when I get back there, I carry a backpack that I'm going to stay all day. I ain't going back there for 2 hours in the morning, 2 hours in the evening. I'm staying all day. So I stick in my jacket in my backpack, and I'm right in the middle of that logging road, and that's when I look up and I see a big track right in the middle of that road. And it's obvious what made it. You can count all 5 toes. I didn't measure it, but I guessed it to be 15 inches, and it's about 7 to 8 inches wide. I see it, and I'm just like, oh, my Lord. And I turn and look, and I see which direction it went, and it went off the road, and it's going toward this rock formation over on the hill. Jeremiah, those tracks were between 3.5 and 4 feet apart in stride. And when it stepped off the road, it sunk like 3 inches. It sunk. And I was like, oh, man. And it was just, when it got off that logging road and started going toward that hill, you could see how much it was sinking in the ground and how much mud it was. You run a horse through a muddy area, it just trumps it up and they sink and mud goes everywhere and all that. So I was like, man. So I found a rock and I put it on that track. And I said, I'm going to bring my best friend back in there and show him that. Now I know what It scared those cows. That's what scared those cows. And it's in front of me somehow. So I walk up the logging road about 20 more yards. I hear just like a baseball bat. It hits wood. I didn't know what that was. Didn't have a clue. Didn't care. I just wanted to get back to my stand. But to be honest with you, after seeing that track, I'm not deer hunting anymore. I'm looking for what made that track. And I want to see it before it sees me. So I'm going back in there, and I get in my stand. I stay all day. I'm looking. I've seen a few deer, but didn't see a lot that day. It didn't seem like they were moving around very good, and it might have been because this thing was in the area. I come out of there, told my best friend the next day, I said, I know what scared, or when we got out of the woods at night, I said, I know what scared those cows. He said, what's that? And I said, Bigfoot. He said, Bigfoot? You and Bigfoot. I said, Scott, I said, how many years have we been hunting together? He said, about 30. I was like, have you ever heard me say anything about Bigfoot? And he said, nope. I said, I'm telling you, I've got a track up there in that logging road that's going to freak you out when you see it. You're going to look at me and go, And I said, you just wait. I'll show it to you more. I got a rock laid up there in the road looking. Where's it? So I took it back in there and showed him the next day, and he said, that's pretty interesting. He said, that's pretty interesting. Still skeptical, didn't want to believe it, but it was like, because he thought I might have been playing hoax. I'm not a hoaxer. I'm a prankster sometimes, but I'm not a hoaxer. So he's like, that's pretty interesting. So we went on and hunted, never seen nothing else, blah, blah, blah. We try to go back a year or two after, and they have a big flood. And we can't get to the other side of the creek where we have two bow feeders over there, one for him and one for me if he decides to bow hunt. And so we couldn't get back there and fill them up because of the flood. So I said, well, I'll go up there in the summertime when the creek is low down and there's no water in it. There's very little bit of water in it. There's always water in it, but it won't be a bunch. So I come back about 2 years later, and I come in, I think it's June or July. So I pull down my four-wheeler off, and I'm trying to get my four-wheeler loaded up with corn, and I go down the creek, and I'm looking around to see where I used to get a good run up that embankment at a 45 and catch that logging road and go back and fill my feeder up. It all washed out when you had a big flood. It just washed the whole embankment out. So I'm walking around in the creek, and I hear this. At that point, I had a 40 caliber on my side because I knew I was going to see a snake on that creek somewhere, somehow, so I always carried my pistol for shooting snakes in the summertime. This thing was up on this ledge, and it growled at me, and it sounds like a dog, but it sounds like a bull at the same time. I know we don't have no cattle on that side of the creek, so whatever this is, I'm thinking, I've never heard anything like that, but I got a 40 caliber. I'm a pretty good shot. Don't mess with me or I'll shoot you, whatever. It does it about probably 4 times within about a 20-minute span. And at that time, I start walking down the creek to look for another place to get my four-wheeler up the creek channel. And I can hear it walking with me up on top of this hill. Can't see it. I'm down in 20 foot deep in that creek probably, or at least 15. And I can hear it walking through the brush up there. And I go down this way, and then I hear it's following me. It's tracking me or whatever. And I thought, that's pretty interesting. Whatever it is definitely paying attention to me. And at that point, I turned and I looked up, and I seen 7 sets of tracks coming off the side of that creek bluff, and they were going in an angle instead of just jumping straight off. It was like I did my four-wheeler. I get a run at it in an angle and go up. These were coming down. So I went over there and put my boot beside them, and they were about 11 inches long, but what I thought was weird about those is that the toes were long like my fingers. They weren't like big and round. They were really long and skinny. You can see the big toe was more like a thumb. The other ones were all long and skinny, and they were about 3 to maybe 3.5 foot apart. It didn't have near as big a stride as the one I'd seen years prior. And I was like, oh man, there's a different one, because I knew those weren't from the same one I'd seen earlier, several years before. And I had taken pictures of the ones that I found 3 or 4 years before, and I had them on one of my phones, and I had transferred my pictures from one phone to another, and then sometimes my game cams go on my cell cam, and sometimes I just go through there and delete pictures. And I either deleted them or they got removed when I switched phones. So I didn't have those first sets of tracks. I had them in an email because I emailed them to a couple of people so I can look back through my email and find them. But it may be thousands of them to go through. But I definitely got them in email because I remember emailing them to a few people. I go up there to get a cattle panel. I'm going to get a cattle panel, lay it on the side of the creek where I can catch it with my knobbies and go up and catch that logging road. And I was just going to wire this cattle panel into the side of the creek channel so I can get a run and get traction and get on it back there. And because I'm not hauling corn back there on my back, I'm getting it on that four-wheeler and I had a two-wheel drive. I'm going up to the barn to get the cattle panel, and owner's up there at the barn. And so I said, hey, buddy, I said, have you got a digital camera? And he said, I do. I said, you got a Bigfoot living on this dead gun place because I found some more tracks. I said, you remember them I found a couple years ago? He said, yep. I said, well, I found some more today. They're not as big, but they're back there. And he was like a kid in a candy store. I said, get your digital camera and meet me down there at that creek, and we'll get some cameras. That I want them on an SD card so we can't lose them. I don't want to lose them. And he gets his camera, and I'm down there wiring this cattle panel up. He comes down there and says, he's looking at me and said, man, that's a pretty good idea, Mark. I would have never thought that. I said, I'm a MacGyver on this type of stuff. I can come up with things. He said, yeah, I would have never thought that you put that cattle panel down that soft sand and you just run over it and go back there. We're sitting there talking. He's on a Polaris, and all of a sudden he goes, again. And I'm telling you, this old man's eyes got as big around as soft. He looked at me and said, Mark, I'm 73 years old. I ain't never heard nothing like that. I started laughing. I said, it's already done that to me like 5 times or 6 times. He said, I don't have a clue. I said, I knew it wasn't one of your cows because you don't have cows over. He said, absolutely not. I wouldn't put my cows over. I would never find them. He said, but I ain't never heard nothing like that. So we're sitting there talking again, and we try to get quiet. And we start hearing it make some, I don't know, it made a couple of weird little bee noises. Not like a mouse, like it was popping its lip. It'd be like that. And I was like, he goes, that's weird. So anyway, it growled at us about 3 or 4 more times, and then it just got quiet. But we could hear it up there moving around. When we was move or whatever, we could hear it. He gets the pictures. He says, I can't wait to show them to the game warden because that's just crazy. So he takes all these pictures, and he's got them on his camera. And I get on back there and fill my feeder up. I never see nothing when I get on top of that hill, never did or anything like that. When I was getting back there to hunt, when we came to hunt during the fall, I was going up that logging road, and when I showed my best friend that track a few years before with a rock, I moved the rock to the side. When I came back hunting this time, there was 2 rocks in the middle of the road. And I'm thinking, I didn't put them there. I removed them from last time. Those rocks haven't been there in years. And there was only 1, but this time there was 2. I'm starting to go back there to hunt, and I checked my feeder before we started our hunt, actually, is when it was. And there's a tree laying across the road. I'm thinking, that's weird. I jumped the gun here. I got to go back to the game warden story real quick, but let me back up. I want to go back to the tree. He goes and shows the game warden 2 weeks later, and game warden told him they were bear tracks, but they're not bear tracks. They were too long to be bear tracks, and bear don't have a 3.5-foot stride. Anyway, he said they got behind his house. He'd heard some noises behind the house for about a week, and they disappeared. That was all before we got to go up there and hunt, before the tree and the rocks. We go back up there, and I'm going across, and there's this tree that's uprooted. It's got a root ball on the end of it. It's laying across my trail, the logging road. It's big around as a football, 15, 18 feet long. It's not something you're going to pick up real easy and move. I was able to grab one end and just move it around off the road and go on in there with my four-wheeler. I could have probably just jumped over it, but I thought, well, I don't want to do that because it takes too much time. I'll just go ahead and move it out of the way. So I got off and moved it out of the way. I go back there and I hunt. About 2 days later, I'm going back in there, and the 2 rocks are back in the road, and the tree was across the road again. I'm thinking, okay, somebody's jacking with me. This is crazy. This shouldn't. I still never found where that root ball come from. I looked all up and down the side of the road, and here's a tree that's got a pretty good root ball on it, bigger than a trash can, not bigger than a 5-gallon bucket's what I'm saying. And I can't see anywhere where it's been uprooted. It was put there in that road. There's nowhere up down that road I could see where that thing was jerked out at. I moved them again, went in there another day or two, never seen them. Never seen nothing else, never heard of it. We came back the next year, and about 100 yards before my deer stand, a bigger tree was laid across the road. And this one was big enough, you wasn't going to move it unless you had a tractor. So it could have been a deadfall, but I never could find where it fell. It was like a treetop that fell out, and then something was just put in there. I never did see the root ball was it or anything like that. I could see where it fell out. And so that was basically the end of it. Never did see anything else other than that. But I've kept my eyes open, and then, of course, we don't hunt there no more. The old man's moved on and all that kind of stuff, so we don't hunt there anymore. But he did say his neighbor had one on a trail cam or a game cam, but I never did get a chance to go see that either. But that's my Oklahoma story.
Mark, it's a wild one, especially that noise that you guys heard. Are you able to share any more specifics about the area that was? I know you mentioned it was like south of Tulsa, right?
Yeah, Bristol. We hunted is out of Bristol, and between Bristol and there's a national forest there, or I forget what they call them, wildlife management areas.
Uh-huh.
We were hunting. There's a wildlife management area probably about 5 miles from us. Oh, actually, it's probably not even 5 miles, probably 3 miles from us. And we were back down in there between Bristol and that wildlife management area, which is, I think there's 2 or 3 big creeks in there at that time. I don't know what the names of them are, but those creeks, they travel all up through there and all. But yeah, Bristol, or BRSTOW, I don't know how they pronounce it up there.
Very interesting. I'm sure there'll be some listeners that hear this, and they might even know that same area. It'll be interesting to hear if anyone reaches out.
They've seen something in that area. It'd be great.
Yeah.
Once you've seen it, you just can't unsee that. It's not like imaginary. I got an imaginary friend over here. It's not like that. I sure changed my attitude a lot when I'm in the woods. I am on guard like nobody's business. Going
back to your property down in Texas, do you think that there's 2 different types of Bigfoot down there? You mentioned you have the picture of the gorilla, then you have the cousin it.
I think the gorilla and the cousin it are the same thing. Okay. I think it's the same one.
Okay.
Yeah, because they're all in this corner, and it's the thickest corner on my property. It is the thickest cover on my property, so it makes total sense. If you're going to hide, you're going to hide where it's thickest, and it's in that little area where it can be undetected. I can see it moving. The guy behind me is on a wildlife ag exhibit. They only bow hunt, and they're just there very seldom. Nobody owns the 12 acre. There's 12 acres to the north of me that's pretty thick. Never seen anybody over there ever. And that's where I think it's, if it has a home or where it's hanging out, I think that's where it's hanging, because that's the thickest place. And here's something to think about, and I thought about this after I heard people say they've seen them 8, 9, 10, 12 feet tall. 12 would be just absolutely gigantic epithecus. And that's what I think some of these might be. You got to think about this. If you're going through the woods, and the woods are thick, and it's just standing there, and all you're going to see is 2 legs, and the cover's got everything else broken up. If it's fairly tall. So if you're not looking mid-range, you could probably miss it completely because you would assume the legs were trees. That's in my opinion. If it was very tall, if it was 8, 9, 10 feet tall, whatever, I would think that some of the brush that I'm looking at, the underbrush comes up so far, you can see trees so far, that middle torso area would just be camouflaged by trees. You wouldn't be looking at it as it's something solid. You just see 2 legs that look like 2 trees.
Oh, you would, you know? It would be the weirdest thing in the world.
I couldn't imagine how we even get through there.
Yeah.
I couldn't imagine you could do it, but hey, I want to back that up with something. I have watched elk that have horns as wide as the hood of my truck run through a forest and not hit hardly a branch or not take their head plumb off. And I'm thinking, how is that possible? I've seen elk with massive racks go through some of the tightest cover. They'll lean that head back and run right through there 100 miles an hour to get away from you. And you would think that their horns would catch a limb and jerk their head plumb back or do a backflip. But nope, right through there. It's amazing what they can do. But here, I want to give you something else. So people ask me, do you believe? I almost had to now. I said, did I care before? I always thought I'm always optimistic. It's like the white deer exists. But if you go try to find one, you'll spend a lot of money trying to find one and probably not ever find one. Unless somebody says, hey, I got one in my backyard eating cherries or whatever. So I look at it like that. White deer exist, but how many do you see when you're hunting? Or it's pretty rare. I think there's more than people think there is. I definitely think there's just, there's too many people. 1 million sightings a year, probably whatever it is, or 100,000, I don't know. They all can't be hoaxers and liars. It can't be.
Have you thought to yourself, what is it that it actually is?
It has to be, it's got to be a cross. That's the only thing I can figure. It's got too much intelligence, man, to be not. I won't say that one hadn't been killed because I think some probably were killed in the 1900s. If you look into Teddy Roosevelt, I think it was, Teddy Roosevelt wrote a book about one killing one. And they were running trap line, and one of his best friends got killed running traps by one, and supposedly he shot at it or killed it or whatever. I can't remember the name of the book that Teddy Roosevelt, but I don't even remember what year that was because I'm older than that. But anyway, but so it's like this. It's got to have the Neanderthal survival deal, and maybe it's an ape. Or we go back to this thing called Gigantopithecus. It's something that wasn't supposed to make it through the Ice Age that did. There's a lot of things. Gar, bowfin, several fish made it through the Ice Age. Why couldn't a mammal that has intelligence that's the place maybe to get warm, stay warm, or figure it out, or whatever? So it's got to be a cross of something. It just has. When I see what I've seen, and it has a human foot track for the most part, other than the one that has the long fingers, that was real scratching my head. But I will say this. I did find a track online. It looked just like what I found in the second time at Bristol. I did find one just like it online. So it's something that happens from time to time, or just maybe the way it steps or whatever. But, man, there's just so much in this world we don't know about.
Oh, I know it. Yeah.
But it has intelligence because how can you survive and not be detected on a daily basis as is? But here's the other thing, and I say this to some of my friends. They say, man, you ought to go out and do some night searching. Well, look, I've seen some of these TV shows, and I don't want to use the word idiot, but I want to put it in a paraphrase so you understand it a little more. If you go hunting something black in the dark of night, even if you find it, you're still at zero. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
I don't understand it. These things are seen in the daytime as much as they're seen at night.
Right.
Why would you not try to prove the species in the daytime? Because if you find them at night on the thermal, there's still skepticism that's going to show up. Mm-hmm. People are going to go, well, it can be a human. Because you ain't got, but if you got it in the daytime, it's a little bit more convincing because you get a better picture. So I don't like to use the word idiot, so I want to retract that. But I'm just saying that I'm not going to go looking for something black in the night. I don't care if you call it up or whatever, because I call coyotes up at night and I call coyotes up in the daytime. If it's a predator, it's looking for a meal. I don't care what time of day it is. I get hungry at 8 o'clock in the morning. I get hungry at midnight. I'm going to get up and go feed.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. Mark, it has been a really fun chat with you. And I would love it if you could, if there's other stuff that happens on your property, definitely keep me up to date and send me an email.
Man, like I said, I don't want to kill it. I want a good, solid picture that right now I would tell people, whatever I say, hey, I'll take a polygraph. I know what I've seen. Mm-hmm. I can't take that back. I ain't trying to pull no bull over nobody's eyes or nothing. And I'm just like here in East Texas. I'm shocked. I really am, because this is not supposed to happen where I'm at. My brother-in-law, he was like, boy, I don't know what you got going on down there, but you got going something. I want to mention one other thing. You hear the term with the orbs and stuff with Bigfoot?
Yep.
I've had a couple of deals on camera that look like little orbs. And people say, that's dust particles going through the air, stuff like that. Yeah. We've seen some that look like a Z. We've seen some that look like a Christmas ornament and all this kind of stuff. But one morning, I'm down here in my hunting blind, and I text my brother-in-law. He's hunting out his hunting blind at another place. And I said, you wouldn't believe what I'm looking at. He said, what's that? I said, I'm looking up in a tree, and it's like there's a spotlight up there in that tree. And he's like, really? I said, yeah. And the sun's not even close to coming up. And I said, it looks just like a little headlamp, little light up there. And I watched this thing for 20 to 30 minutes. And I don't know if it was a reflection off something or what, because it's up in a tree like 35, 40 feet. And then all of a sudden, I looked back over, I looked away, looked back, it's still there, and I looked back and it's gone. And I've never seen it again. I thought, that is weird.
Wow.
Because it looked like a little old light up on the top of a tree. And I was like, and he said, the weirdest stuff goes on down there. And I'm like, I know. But that light, I don't believe in the orb stuff, but that was pretty weird. That was pretty weird. You would have thought somebody was coon hunting in one of them trees, because it just sat up there for a little bit, and I watched it, and it may have been a reflection of sunlight coming through something or whatever, but I thought, that's pretty weird. But that's the only thing I've ever seen as far as a light, other than cameras and stuff. But I don't believe in that orb stuff, but that was freaky.
You definitely have some weird stuff going on down there, Mark, for sure.
I'm beginning to think so, because like I said, try to get some of my buddies have come out, we'll hog hunt, and sometimes we hear some things, but most time we don't. It's just typical old hunting. And every now and then we'll hear something that's a little different, but most times it's the same old stuff. But it's like right now, so the last time I seen it was probably in, probably August was the last time that I seen it. I'll send you the picture, I have a date on it, so you'll be able to, that'll be my last picture, has a date on it, and I've seen it. I ain't seen no more signs. I look in the mud all the time. Right. All the time. I'm looking around my pond for steps. I'm looking at the creek channels and stuff. I'm always looking for that little something different. Oh, I know what I was going to tell you. So my grandson and I, we were where I'd seen this thing at before. I had explained to him where I'd seen it and everything else, but about a month before that, before I seen it, we were walking through there, and it was a pig skeleton in a tree about, 5 foot tall, and it was in the fork of a tree.
Oh, really?
And my grandson says, my grandson goes, Papa, look here. I'm like, yeah, what'd you do that for? He said, I didn't do that. I said, yeah, you did. He said, no, I didn't. I said, whatever. And I just shook it off like I didn't think nothing of it. Well, right where I seen that thing walk to the tree, the other side of that little opening that tree was in, that tree is about as big around as a Copenhagen can. About that size. I don't know how you do that. Smaller Pepsi. Actually, probably about the size of a Red Bull can, be more accurate.
Okay.
Anyway, the tree is just bent over, pushed over, and the skull is about 25 feet from where it was in the tree. And I thought that was pretty weird.
Yeah, that's very weird.
Because he swears. He said, I did not put that there, Paddle Mark. I said, yeah, you did. He said, no, I did not. And I was like, boy, don't be pulling on my leg like that. He said, I didn't do it. He said, it was there. That's why I told you. And I was like, I didn't do it. And it's just a little from one of the pigs we'd shot. And it was shoved in the fork of that limb, and it was jammed in there or whatever. And I never even touched it. I just looked at it. Yeah, you're just jerking my chain. But now it makes sense, because it's not 40 feet from where it walked by that tree. Yeah. Everything's happening in that corner. Everything's happening in that corner.
I would be really aware when you're going back there for sure, Mark.
I'm telling you, I don't go get in my bow stand without my pistol. I've got my pistol on me at all times now. Again, I don't want to shoot it. I just want self-protection.
Absolutely.
But I don't know what I'm doing with it. Some people, I will say one more thing. I know you're probably ready to get off here. Somebody said, well, what about homeless people? I'm like, yeah, it's a possibility. You remember when back in the old days, mountain men go up in the mountains and you'd never see them again?
Sure.
Okay. Indian tribes, and I can't remember which ones. I'm trying to think. It might have been either the Sioux or the Crow. If you dishonored the tribe or were caught doing something with a squaw, and somebody will probably elaborate on this a little bit more, but they would kick you out of the tribe and tell you to go to the mountains and never be seen again. And so I've often wondered if this could be some past episodes of that, because I'm pretty sure it's more than one tribe, but it's either the Sioux, the Crow, I can't remember, but one of them, maybe all of them. I don't remember. I can't remember if we're Cherokee or Comanche, but whatever, it may be something just in the Native American deal. Somebody may, like I said, chime in on that at one point and see, but I do know that I've heard that years and years ago, that if they did something to dishonor the tribe, they were kicked out, and sometimes they would give them a squaw and they would send them out and say, don't come back, you're no more part of this tribe, you're done, and they go into the mountains or wilderness and never to be seen again. What if they got up there and started a breeding population? It's like the Aborigines, I can't even pronounce it, Aborigines or whatever in Australia or whatever, those tribal people that they keep. In fact, I heard they found one just the other day, another tribe that never even ever been found.
Well, it is very interesting how in certain parts of the world there are still tribes that don't have contact really with the outside world.
To say we know everything, again, it goes right back to that circle. We keep beating that dead horse. We don't know everything. We're not ever going to know everything. We just got to take each grain and each piece of the puzzle and put it together. And one day it's going to come up there. But, you know, with proving, let's just say Bigfoot in its existence at all, there's lots of examples of blood and hair. Jeff Meldrum's got man, he told me some stories that were just awesome. And some of the tracks he's casted and stuff like that. And I got to visit with him at one of the Bigfoot conventions or conferences.
Oh, sure. Yeah.
And I ended up buying one of the casts from Patty out of California. And I can say now that I own that, compared to the ones that I found in Oklahoma, they're not near as big as Patty's. Not even close. Yeah, they're good, but Patty's like 18 inches. It's a big old track. It's 17, 18 inches. The ones in Oklahoma were not that big, but real similar. That's about all I got. You know, I'll just keep an eye out on it, and buddy, I'll tell you if I get it, I'll get a hold of you. And
I love it.
Like I said, when we get through here, I want to send you these pictures, and I want to know when I send you these pictures, I want you to text me right back and tell me what your thoughts are. And you tell me, because I'm always open to, hey, if you think it's not a buzzard, I'm not going to go for that because it's too shiny. There's no feathers.
Right.
It's not a buzzard.
Yep.
But you say, it does look like a gorilla, or it does look like a hairy homeless person or whatever. I'll take anything and at least put it into play.
I'll let you know for sure.
All righty, man. I enjoyed doing this. Hopefully everybody got to hear this and know I'm just telling it just like it is, and it is what it is. You can't unsee what you've seen, and maybe there's a reason why I'm supposed to see it. Good Lord knows I don't.
There you go. Mark, it's been a pleasure chatting with you, and I hope to be chatting with you again in the future.
All right. Enjoy it, Jeremiah.
Thank you. Here at Bigfoot Society, our goal is to provide a platform for those that have encountered Bigfoot to share their encounter in a safe and respected environment. But we need to hear your story. If you've experienced something that you just can't explain, please send me an email at bigfootsociety@gmail.com. Then we can start the conversation. And I know a lot of you have not shared your encounter at all. It's been 20 years, and it's time that you get this off your chest, and then you can get some well-deserved rest, because I know you haven't been sleeping. I understand what you're going through, and I appreciate every one of you listening.